introduction. It's good to be here. And as he says, this is the first time I've told my story. My wife has not heard my story. However, she lived a lot of my stories, so it's not unknown to her. She even told me before we got started that if I didn't tell the truth, she's going to heckle me. So, to the best of my knowledge, I'm going to try to tell the truth as I remember it. It's incorrect, right? All right, so anyways, my sobriety date is June 28th, 2021. I am sober only by the grace of God. These 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous, a good sponsor, and the undying support of a loving, supportive wife. Right? Never would have made it. So I was a person that probably the last 5 or 6 years of my life, there was no willpower, there was no human intervention, nothing that could be done humanly to keep me from drinking. Just nothing will stop me. So I'll tell you a little bit about my life. I was born in High Point, North Carolina. I had an older sister, older brother, and then a younger sister. My older brother and sister, we were all 5 years apart. And then my younger sister was 10 years younger than me, so we always told her she was an accident. She was an oopsie. So anyway, I had two very loving, supportive parents. My dad worked. My mom would stay at home. And I had a pretty normal childhood, I guess, the way I remember it. I was active in, played Little League Baseball, played Little League Baseball. My brother and I liked to swim. He would play basketball with me in the backyard. Now, keep in mind, he's 5 years older than me and was probably 1.5 feet taller than me because he's 6'6" now. So I never liked basketball because I was basically a punching bag. So, it was a lot of this, playing basketball. So when I got into high schools, he went on to be somewhat of a high school basketball star, and he got a scholarship to ECU, and all the coaches said, Burrow, you got to play basketball. You got to play basketball. I said, no, I don't like basketball. I don't like basketball. Anyway, I was a member of Scouts. Remember that being exciting at the time. I think I was probably 11 or 12. I think I'd reached the level of star in Scouts. And I found out that I liked scouting girls more than I liked going to scout meetings. So if I go into, when I go into that elementary school was nothing out of the ordinary. I never had any problem getting along with people. I like being around people, different people. People always seem to like me, and I like being around other people, so I never had any problems with relating or interacting with other people. When I get into junior high school, I have the opportunity to play more sports, and so I choose football and track. They were my favorite. Had good grades. Never really got into any trouble. Now, I wasn't a perfect kid. I did the little things that young boys will do, but most of the time I never got caught. My parents didn't know about it. I do remember that they were fairly strict, or at least I thought so at the time. They had pretty high standards of what they expected out of their children. My dad always took us to church when we were younger. He always taught us to tithe to church. Always told us that as we grow up and get older that we should always give back to the community. So that's how I was raised. So I get into junior high school I think it was the ninth grade. That was junior high school at the time. At that time it was called junior high school. I was on student council from the 9th grade all the way up to the 12th in some capacity or the other. I was on the debating team. Good place for a future alcoholic to be, is learning how to argue. So. I enjoyed that. Made good grades. I had my first drink at, I think it was probably around 13 or so. It was some flavor of Boone Farm. Myself and I think 2 other boys in the neighborhood were camping out. In my neighborhood, when you camped out, it meant we were spending the night in somebody's loft over their garage. So that was our camping out. So I remember that, and I remember getting kind of crazy, and I think we were running around through the park or something. But anyway, didn't get caught. There was no consequences. I really didn't. Best I remember was not a big deal for me. I mean, it was kind of a neat thing to do, but it didn't start affecting or influencing my life. Now, as I get into high school and get licensed and are able to drive, the guys start hanging out and we want to drink beer. So we do. And it didn't take us long to figure out that we could get a faster buzz if we drank Schlitz malt liquor. And we did. It's probably the reason I never liked beer. That stuff's nasty. So we did that. Again, no consequences. I don't think can remember any time my parents ever found out or thought that I was drunk or high. I did experiment with pot some. I never really liked pot because I found out if I smoked some pot and had one beer, then I'm out for the night. That's what it did for me. So that never was a big thing for me. So I had typical experiences. It never was it never controlled my life. It never become something that I had to do and wanted to do on a regular basis. It's just, we'd get together maybe on a Friday or Saturday night. We'd ride around and drink, and then we'd go home. That's pretty much it. So when I graduated high school, I went to college at RIT in Rochester. And if any of you have ever been to Rochester in the winter, it's a cold place for a Southern boy to be. But that's where I was. So I graduated there in 2.5 years, came back to work in the family printing business, got reconnected with a girl I had been dating in high school, and we decided that we liked being around, hanging out with each other, so we were going to move in together. Well, my parents didn't like that idea too much. They said that was not going to happen. So they made a deal with us that if we would get married, my mom said she'd buy us a house. And we'd already been looking at a house to buy it together anyway because we both worked. She said she'd buy us the house. We thought, what the heck? What do we know about being married? It's the same thing as living together, right? Or so we thought. So I guess at this time I was probably 22. Still young, still very young. And so we did, and it was good for probably a couple of years. And then we both realized we just really didn't want to be married. We were too young. We hadn't really experienced that much of life separately, and we enjoyed being together, but we didn't want to be married. So we divorced. We divorced. It was agreed upon and remained friends. It was very amicable, and that was that. That was wife number one. So you're going to start to see a pattern here. So after that, I met another lady. I guess I was a couple of years later or whatever, and we got married. So apparently this is my parents. I had put this idea in my head that I had to be married and have a family. It's really no excuse, but this is the pattern that I'm heading down. So we got married. We had two boys. I have two sons now that are 38 and 36. They work for me in the business, and so we had those with this wife. And things were good for probably about 9 or 10 years. But then I found out I wasn't happy. This is going to become a pattern for me. I can have everything in the world. I can have all the nice things that you want. I had all the finances, the money. But eventually I will get tired of it, and I wasn't happy. So I'd get this feeling, I'll just start over. So we divorced. That one was fairly expensive. But anyway, we divorced. And again, I find wife number 3. A couple of years later, it seemed like 2 years as my wife calls it leapfrog. She says I leapfrog from one relationship to another. That's her term for it. But anyway, so we got married. I had my daughter with her. And then again, it was good for about 10 years or so. She was starting, I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't know anything about addiction. During the time she and I were married, I drank none at all, recreationally, or no drinks. I was active in the church. I was a young adult Sunday school teacher. I was a deacon on the board at church, very involved in the church. She started with Xanaxes for her panic attacks. And it started to become a real nuisance because after she started taking Xanaxes, then she started drinking wine under Xanaxes. And she'd call me all hours during the day when I'm at the office saying, I'm so-and-so, can you come get me because I can't drive. So it started to get really old. Not to mention she did, I'm not going to say she was a bad mother, but she left all the chores that had to be done as far as buying groceries, taking care of my daughter, taking her to dance. I was only dance dad, sitting in the room at dance. That's my responsibility. And I didn't mind it because by this time I was starting to have a lot of resentments towards her. And so I just focused all my attention on my daughter. My love and attention went to her. And it was good. But I had reached that point again. I said, this is not right. I'm not happy. And we know it's all about me. So I wanted out of the relationship. And we did. That was a real expensive divorce. So anyway, that brings me probably till, I don't remember the year, but then I met this woman that was several years younger than me. This was going to be wife number 4. And we didn't really intend on getting married. We were just going to live together. Well, she introduced me to something I had never really tried, but maybe once or twice in my life. You know those energy powders you buy? From people you're not supposed to buy them from? The nose beers? All right, so I really liked that. Now that was my thing. I finally found this thing, when I did that like that hole inside of me. I mean, I just felt good. It just filled me up inside. I guess sometime maybe in a haze or during that period of time, sometime anyway, we got married. That happened. So this went on for, this went on probably 5 or 6 years at least. We're at the point where the two of us together were doing probably 2 ounces a month of powders. And along with that comes, we were still working and functioning at work. Along with that came alcohol at the end of the night or actually early morning to take the edge off enough that we could go to sleep. So this is actually the beginning of using alcohol as a substance instead of just using it as, a drink of joy or to have, just a drink with somebody. It became a necessity. Some point during this time, my dad died. Now, he was very important to me in my life. He was my hero. He set standards high. He was responsible, respectable in the community. And I felt like at that time, 2 things happened. Number 1, I would be ashamed if he ever knew or found out that I was doing the energy powders. So I was able to stop that. Just cold turkey, just quit when I said one day I'm not doing this anymore. Another contributing factor to that is 2 of the dealers that I was using, both at different times, had gone to prison. So I started thinking, I wonder how many videotapes I'm on going in and out of these guys' houses. So anyway, I stopped that. It wasn't a problem. But I increasingly started drinking more and more alcohol. It wasn't to the point yet where I had to have it in the morning, I had to have it at lunch, but it was headed that way. First, I'd say that I just thought myself a heavy drinker. It was not a problem at this time. But as time goes on, it becomes an everyday thing. Started out, I'd come home at lunch. I lived close to the plant. I could come home. I'd have a drink at lunch. Then as soon as I get home from work, I'd start drinking the rest of the night. I wasn't blacking out. I don't even think I was really passing out that much at this time. It was okay. Well, at some point, I crossed that line where one day I got up and said, you know what, I need to stop drinking, or at least try to see if I can cut back on my drinking. And I tried it. I think when I had drinks the night before, got up that morning and I said, I'm going to wait at least till 2 o'clock before I have a drink. Well, about 10 or 11 o'clock that morning, I was like this. And that's the first time that ever happened to me. So I'd always had a drink or something at lunch. So this scared me. I'm like, okay, so maybe I need to take a break from this for a while. But I can't do it this way because it's just a horrible, sickly feeling, and they say it can be very dangerous. So I decided I need to go to detox and go to Fellowship Hall. Now, interesting thing here is my wife, Yvonne, and I have been friends and known each other for like 30 plus years or more. The 4th wife, and she has left me because she says because of my drinking, but that may have been some of it, but also there was another outside party involved in it. And so she and I talk some. She finds out the situation. So when I go to detox, she picks me up and brings me home. And she said, "Do you have a meeting scheduled?" She'd done a lot of research on this. And I said, "Yes, I know where there's meetings. There's one at this place in High Point every morning at 7:30. Well, apparently she didn't trust me to go to the meeting. She said, "Well, I'll be here, pick you up, take you to the meeting, and pick you up again." And she did that for 3 days. Now, keep in mind, she doesn't live here. She's a salesperson that travels from different locations. So she made the effort and was determined to be sure that I got to that AA meeting every morning. And I did, just so I could have something here to sustain me until I went into fellowship. So I went into fellowship early. I think it was about November 1st. It was a great program, met some great people there. I learned everything there was about alcoholism. I learned all about the compulsion to drink, the obsession to drink, the insanity of alcoholism. And I also hadn't decided I'm not an alcoholic. So, I'm feeling pretty good. I've been in here for 28 days. I've been, detox. So, I'm probably approaching about 35 days of sobriety. They feed you good when you're there, which I wasn't eating, when I was drinking as much as I was. We could exercise. It's a good place to be. So I come out feeling good. So I'm feeling so good that my kids and I, 2 sons and I, planned an Appalachian Trail trip. So we spent 3 days on Appalachian Trail, walked, 65 miles or so. This is the first time we did it. The first time. So I was feeling good. I was feeling healthy, best I've felt in a really long time. Just from that short period of detoxing and going to the treatment center. All right, so I started going to the AA meetings. I was going regularly at first, like they said I was supposed to do. Had a sponsor, but I say he didn't really communicate or stay in touch with me, but maybe some of it was my fault too. But I had the feeling that I wasn't getting anything out of it. I heard what some of them were saying, but it didn't register with me. And I certainly didn't understand these steps. I said, I don't see how that can keep anybody sober. I just don't get it. And see, the problem is I just wasn't ready to surrender. I had never admitted that I was an alcoholic. And I was. So anyway, this led to, Yvonne and I went on a trip to Mexico. We were actually together by this time. And on the train, I was probably 5 or 6 months sober at that time, out of treatment. And I ordered a drink on the plane. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm on vacation. I'm going to have a drink." I said, "I can drink. I've been sober for 6 months. I hadn't had anything to drink." Or 4 months, whatever it was. I said, "I can have a drink." I think I actually had 2 or 3 on the plane. Maybe. Something like that. But anyway, it still wasn't bad. I didn't spend a whole week in Mexico drunk, and I didn't continue the following weeks being drunk all the time. But it was a gradual progression, and it graduates before you realize it, and it's funny how it changes your mind and how you think, the insanity. Where I never drank any of the time during my drinking days did I drink in the office at our plant. Never. Now, I would drink some in the morning when I go out to get breakfast or whatever, but I never drink inside the plant. But it was just, it had control of me. And I tell people, the sad thing is, I believed in God, and I never prayed and asked God to help me because I was afraid He would. That's how insane I was. I was so insanely attached, and the attraction and compulsion to drink in me was so strong. I didn't want to stop. My life was miserable, and I was not happy. Now, Von's life was worse than mine, because a lot of mine in the last, 5 or 6 months, or maybe more than that, probably last year, was blackouts. So, I was fine. I could black out every night, wake up the next morning, never had a hangover. I was always ready to start over. And she'd say, "You don't remember last night, do you?" Nope. So this time I'm starting to realize, okay, I got a problem, but I know I can't quit. So I'm going to taper off. Which every day, I would get up every morning, and my intentions were to take my maintenance dose, which was like 1 or 2 when I'd get up in the morning. And then I would go to work. I'd go out at breakfast at 9 o'clock. Or I go out to breakfast at 8:30 because it's a 20-minute drive from where I work. Because so by the time I got to town, our plant's in Asheboro, the ABC store would be open. So I could go to the ABC store and I could get 5 more minis or a 10-pack of minis, and then I'd swing back by McDonald's and get breakfast and dump out all my Diet Coke, about that much, and put 2 or 3 in there. It depends on how many I bought that day. Because I always had at least 2 or 3 that time in the morning, and then when I got in the car to drive home, I had either 2, 3, or 7 left, depending on how froggy I was feeling that day. Put it that way. So this is becoming a problem, and I can't stop, and I can't say I don't really want to stop. What I want is a different outcome. Every day I'd get up, think, okay, today I'm going to drink just enough to maintain and not black out. But it never would happen. Every day ended just as bad as the day before. Now, we had a place at the beach. We were going to the beach one weekend. I think this was on a Friday. This is in late June. And I came home, I had bicycles on the back of the car, I planned the beach trip, and I don't know what happened, what was said. I'm sure it was my fault in some way. She said she wasn't going with me. Probably because I was too drunk to drive, which most of the time I was. I don't know how many times I've driven from here to Carolina Beach with, I don't know how drunk I was. This weekend in particular, we're talking about when I get to the condo and pull up in the parking garage, I open the door and fall out in the parking garage. And I had just driven, 2 hours from here to get there. Some strangers came by and helped me up to my condo. I don't know who they were, never saw them again. They asked me if I was okay, so, alcoholic thinking. I said, I'm diabetic. First thing I come up with. I'm sure they knew I was just drunk. But anyway, they helped me upstairs. And apparently, I don't know if they told the paramedics I was diabetic or what. About 30 minutes later, paramedics come in. They'll never keep the door locked when I was there. I'm sitting at the dinner. Are you okay? And I don't remember any of that. Vine does, so we got cameras in the condo, so she got it all on camera. So anyway, this one did it for me. I drank the whole weekend I was there. I was sad the whole weekend I was there. I kept thinking about all the things and ways I'd hurt her that I didn't remember the things I'd done. In general, my life was good except for the things I was doing to other people and doing to myself. I mean, I hadn't lost, still had a company, still had money, still had a car, still had a license, had a car with a blow and go. But something happened to me that weekend. It just totally defeated me. When I came home on Sunday, I think the first thing she told me to do was take a shower. She said apparently I had to shower the whole time, which is very unusual for me because I'm pretty much a neat, clean freak. So anyway, I drank the whole weekend. Monday morning, I get up, and I can't go to work. Alcohol's never, or the nose powders have never affected me to the point that I couldn't show up at work. And I couldn't. I mean, I felt like I was emotionally, physically beat down. There was just, I was just done. I was just wasted. I was just an empty shell. The first time I'd ever been to that point. Because usually if I get that way, I'm passed out. So I don't remember it anyway. So I'm standing in our kitchen on a Monday instead of being at work, drinking my first fifth of vodka a day. I usually drink a fifth of vodka in the morning and when I come home, or during the early morning, and then in the afternoons I would usually get home by 2 o'clock, then I start on my fifth of bourbon. No, that was my drinking habits at the time. So I'm standing in the kitchen at 1 or 2 o'clock that afternoon, finishing off, I think, the vodka before I go to my next bottle of bourbon. And just something happened to me. I mean, I'm standing there. She's in her office in the house. She's working. And this just voice in my head says, you need to stop. And I'm like, I didn't want to stop. Now, I told you I never asked God for help because I was afraid He would. And that voice had to come from God, because I told her I wanted to go to the detox. Of course, she gave me the side eye, like, what is this, number 10, trying to get frequent membership or something. But anyway, she did. And when I got the detox, I found out later that my blood alcohol content, this is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, was 0.45. So I know that thought that came into my head was not a rational thought that came from my mind. That had to be some type of spiritual intervention. I call it, my God is what I call my higher power. Well, while we're waiting, it takes, and this is probably 3 hours after I've been there, because when you go to hospital for detox, they make you wait a while for they get everything ready for you. So we've probably been there 2 or 3 hours. There was an older couple, and I say older couple, older than me, that were sitting outside on the bench at the hospital, and they were sitting there holding hands, talking. And for some reason, I was drawn to those people. And the Bible tells me you need to leave those people alone. So I was drawn to those people for some reason. Anyway, I walked out there to them and asked them, I don't know whether they were spiritual or not. For some reason I thought they were. I said, I am here for alcohol addiction. Would you mind praying for me? And the guy said, yes, we would love to. And so we all three held hands. I stood there. I don't remember what he prayed, but I do remember them praying for me. That experience this time at detox, because I've probably, like I said, I've been to treatment, I've been to detox probably at least 10 times. It was totally different. There was something different and changed about me. The whole time I was in detox, I was just relaxed and chilled, just waiting to make the next step. Now, the times before, I was just there usually because somebody had suggested that I go, or somebody had taken me. There was one time, maybe more than once, but I do know there was one time that Yvonne took me to detox one morning as she was going to work, and I was back on the front porch drinking when she came home that afternoon. And she was not very happy about that. But anyway, that's a different story. So anyway, so I go through the detox. I'm feeling 100% better about life in general. I feel like something's happening here to me on the inside. When I get out, I find out where the local meetings are. I go to a meeting that evening when I got out. This was on June 20. It was right before July. It was June 28th when I went in. So I went to a meeting. I think it was on that Friday because I went in on a Monday. Listened. I'm not going to say that I got it all instantly and it all made sense. But, I'm thinking, I got no place else to go. What is it? If I'm going to live my life and survive, I cannot beat this disease on my own. I'd already proven that. I knew I had a problem. I finally surrendered to the fact that I was an alcoholic and my life was unmanageable and I could not defeat it on my own. So that led me to going to 90 meetings. Well, actually, I probably did 2 meetings a day the first 90 days, but I went to a lot of meetings. Anytime I'd drive back and forth to work, which was a 50-minute drive, I was listening to speakers on YouTube. I met my sponsor. We started talking, started working the steps, started to make sense to me. I was feeling better. And at the beginning of this, I was thinking, I'm a person. I realized I can never drink again. And at the beginning, I'd say the first 5 or 6 months, I didn't really think about drinking. I probably would, maybe. I don't know. I don't think I would have had a drink. But anyway, I was telling myself I'm a person that can't drink. Because I was a person, I was telling myself I can't drink, which I couldn't, because I knew what would happen if I drank. But I'd say over the last several months, it's been over a year now, it's kind of changed now. Now I feel like now I'm the person that doesn't drink, not a person that can't drink. I'm a person that doesn't drink. So anyway, the journey has been great. If you're new, I'll just say work the steps, believe in the steps, get a sponsor, let them lead and guide you, and it'll work and you'll have your life back. Because I lived a life in a fog every day. I was surprised at all the things going on around me in life when I got sober. So much that I missed. Anyway, I'm Doug. I'm an alcoholic, and it's good to be sober. Thank you.